Should we judge old games by a modern standard? This question arose when I came across this video by Co-op64.
My gaming hot take is that you can't review old games through the lens of the game is old, so you have to treat it differently.
After reading the comments, I was honestly surprised because there were a lot more people who disagreed than I would have expected. Regardless, after seeing all the points they made, my answer to the question was and still is undoubtedly yes! But why is that? If you're a fan of any sport, you're quite familiar with the idea of judging players based on how good they were compared to the era in which they played in. Bill Russell played before the world even had color, and clips of his games are as rare as finding a Hollow Knight fan that likes Markoth.
This fight just... so much pain!
And most people would still have him as a top 10 player of all time. This is because of how good he was compared to other players in the era in which he played in. If you plucked him out of the 60s and put him in the modern NBA, he probably wouldn't be anything special. But that's only natural as the game of basketball evolves over time. It doesn't take away from his greatness because at the end of the day, he retired with the most rings in NBA history. Some people will try to apply similar logic to video games and rank them according to how good they were for their time, but it just doesn't really work. The key difference between ranking basketball players and ranking video games is that video games are not athletes, they're not people, they are products and may even be considered art. The concept of greatness is irrelevant in this conversation. I don't care how good a game may have been in the 90s because we aren't in the 90s anymore. We're in 2025 and we're playing and judging these games in 2025. There's absolutely nothing wrong with acknowledging how influential or innovative or impressive a game was for its time, but it's ridiculous to claim that makes it better than a newer game when it's simply a worse experience. Let's take the Pokemon franchise as an example. Pokemon Sun wouldn't even exist without Red and Blue, and it's a pretty mediocre game by today's standards. But at the end of the day, I would much rather play Pokemon Sun than Pokemon Red, which in my eyes just straight up makes it a better game, regardless of how good Red may have been for its time. Just to clarify, all of this isn't to say that a game being old inherently makes it bad or worse than modern games. The original Doom is still one of my favorite FPS games almost 30 years after its release, and Fire Red is still great in comparison to the modern Pokemon games. They still hold up decades later because they aren't just good for their time, they're good games in general. No matter how many advancements are made within their franchises, they will always be enjoyable. To wrap it all up, I believe that all games, regardless of how long ago they were released, should be reviewed, ranked, and judged based on how well they hold up today, as the only thing that matters to me is which games offer the best experiences in the modern day. Whether or not you disagree, I hope you'll drop a comment explaining why, and while you're down there, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. See y'all in the next one.